My mother kicked me out of the house the day I needed her most. I was 17, standing on our front porch with a small duffel bag and a positive pregnancy test hidden in the pocket of my school hoodie. She stood in the doorway with a Bible in her hands and her eyes swollen from crying. When the door slammed behind me, with that dry, final sound, I swore I would never go back. 20 years later, at the very same kind of door, at 11:30 on a rainy Thursday night, somebody started knocking. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 more. When I looked through the peephole, my heart almost dropped to the floor. It was her. The woman who once said she didn't have a daughter anymore was standing in the dim hallway of my apartment building, soaked from the rain, clutching a worn-out Bible to her chest, asking for a place to stay. Before I tell you what happened that night, I need you to know who I am now, and who I was back then. My name is Anna. I'm 37 years old and I live in a small, slightly tired apartment on the 8th floor of an older building, on a noisy street in a mid-sized American city. The kind of street where a bus sighs past at all hours, sirens cut through the air once in a while, and someone's always dragging out trash cans too late at night. I work at a health insurance call center. I spend my days listening to people beg for authorizations, fight over copays, and cry about loved ones in hospital beds. After a while, you learn to build a wall inside your head so you don't bring every story home with you. But there's one story that never stays behind that wall. Mine. I live with my daughter, Laura. She's 20, with a smile that somehow brightens what our electric bill tries to dim, and a way of talking that mixes tough and gentle in a way I never quite learned. Sometimes I look at her and feel like I'm seeing a version of myself that didn't crack in all the same places. We share the rent, the bills, the last slice of pie, and a few silences she doesn't fully understand yet. On a cheap IKEA bookshelf in our living room, squeezed between second-hand paperbacks and self-help books I bought on sale, there's an old Bible wrapped in clear plastic that's turned a little yellow with time. On the first page, written in strong black ink, is a name, Angela Marie Carter. My mother. Right below it, in smaller, slightly slanted handwriting, there's a line that once made me cry, for my daughter Anna, so that the word never leaves your path. That Bible used to sit on my mother's kitchen table. On the night I was kicked out, I grabbed it without thinking. I shoved it into my bag along with 2 changes of clothes and that drugstore test that had flipped my world upside down. For years, I couldn't bring myself to open it. It just sat there on my shelf like a silent witness to everything that had gone wrong between us. It's funny how much weight an object can carry. I spent half my life trying to forget my mother. The other half trying to forget the way she looked at me that day. So when I heard those knocks on my apartment door 20 years later, it was like someone had found a hidden button inside my chest and slammed a fist down on it. I could have just opened the door, turned the deadbolt, let the latch click, and faced that older version of the woman I'd last seen with fire in her eyes and a Bible in her hand. But I didn't. In that first minute, I did what I've trained myself to do in the face of anything that threatens my fragile peace. I froze on the outside, panicked on the inside, and pretended nothing was happening. I jerked away from the peephole so fast I almost lost my balance. I pressed my back against the hallway wall like that could hide me from someone who'd already seen the worst of me a lifetime ago. The knocking came again, weaker this time. 3 knocks. Pause. 2. Then her voice, one I would recognize in the middle of any crowd, slipped through the thick wood of the door like it was nothing. Anna, she didn't call me daughter. Not yet. Anna, I know it's you. I know you're there. I clenched the damp dish towel in my hands until my knuckles hurt. For a second, a word rose up in my throat, but it got stuck, heavy, right behind my teeth. That tone, the way she dragged out the last syllable of my name just a little, the short breaths between phrases. It all slammed me back into another day I'd buried as deep as I could. The day that door closed the first time. In an instant, I wasn't in my narrow apartment hallway with flickering yellow light. I was back in a cramped suburban kitchen, 17 years younger, holding the same fear in a different body. I remember the smell of burnt coffee that morning. The stained tablecloth, the scratched wooden chairs, the ceiling fan making that annoying clicking sound my mom always said she'd have someone fix one of these days. I remember her standing by the stove with her Bible open on the counter, like she was trying to lean on something that wasn't made of skin and bone. And more than anything, I remember the cool plastic of the pregnancy test in my hand, hidden in the pocket of my school hoodie. I'd taken the test in my friend's bathroom, hands shaking, eyes glued to that little window like it was going to deliver a sentence. When the second line appeared, forming that faint red cross, I knew no apologizing, no, but he promised, no, maybe it's wrong, would change what had already started inside me. I was pregnant. 16, almost 17, and pregnant. The father was a guy 2 years older, all easy smiles and sweet words with zero sense of responsibility. When I told him, he sent a text so short it practically buzzed through my hand, "This really complicates things. I can't be a dad right now. You'll figure it out, okay? Better if you don't drag me into it. Sorry." I read those words until they blurred and lost their shape. I deleted the message, but I couldn't erase what it did inside me. That morning, I walked home from school like the sidewalk might collapse under my feet. The sun felt too bright, car horns too loud, the laughter of other girls crueler than normal. When I turned onto our street, I saw my mother through the kitchen window. She was stirring something on the stove, hair in a messy bun, apron dotted with old grease stains. The Bible lay open on the table, like most mornings. My mom was well known in our little church as a woman of faith. She led Bible studies, prayed out loud in that steady voice people admired, quoted verses at the drop of a hat. Other women pulled her aside for advice. The pastors trusted her. People said she carried a different light. I believed in that light. I believed in God, the Bible, and my mother. At least until that day. I walked into the house, trying hard to look normal. I dropped my backpack on the sagging couch, kissed her cheek that smelled like soap and onions, and sat at the table like any other afternoon. My dad had already left for work. He did construction and left before sunrise, came home exhausted. He wasn't around much for the hard conversations. That kept him safe from some guilt, but it also kept him far from a lot of truth. The test in my pocket felt 10 times heavier than any textbook. I could hide this. I could wait weeks, maybe months, until my body betrayed me. I could pretend nothing was happening and hope it would somehow vanish. But when I lifted my eyes and saw the verse underlined on the open page, "Train up a child in the way he should go," something in me that still believed in truth refused to lie. "Mom," my voice came out thinner than I expected. "I need to tell you something." She set the wooden spoon down, wiped her hands on her apron, and looked at me with that full attention that always made me feel seen. "What is it, Anna? You look pale. Did you eat something bad? You feel sick." My hand slid into my hoodie pocket until my fingers wrapped around the test. Every inch of that movement felt like saying goodbye to the girl I had been. I pulled it out and set it in the middle of the table. For a second, the entire world went mute. The ceiling fan kept clicking. The coffee pot hissed softly. A dog barked down the street. But between us there was a silence so heavy I could hear my own heart. Her eyes moved from my face to the small white plastic on the table. She frowned, picked it up gently, turned it over like it might bite. It took her a few seconds to understand what she was holding. When it clicked, her face changed. "Anna," her voice came out rough. "What is this?" I wanted to say, "It's a mistake." I wanted to say, "I don't know." I thought about pretending I was just as surprised. But the time for pretending had passed. "I'm pregnant, Mom." The word seemed too big for our small kitchen. They crashed into the walls and came right back at me. My mom closed her eyes for a moment, like she was silently begging for help. When she opened them, I didn't see hatred there. What I saw hit even harder. Disappointment. With who? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I said his name so quietly I wasn't sure she heard. She did. She pressed a hand to her mouth like she was holding back a scream. That boy? She said, louder now. The one who never shows up to church, always hanging around parking lots and convenience stores. That one. I didn't answer. We both knew. She started pacing, back and forth in the small kitchen, running her hand through her hair and completely undoing the bun. The Bible stayed wide open on the table like it was watching. Anna, I warned you so many times, she said, voice shaking. I told you to be careful. I told you not to get too close to someone who doesn't walk with God. How many girls have we watched throw their lives away this way? I know I messed up, I said, my own voice breaking. I'm scared, Mom. It's a baby. Your grandchild. I thought about ending it, but I couldn't. I didn't know what to do. So I came to you. She squeezed her eyes shut like that last sentence had torn something inside her. You thought about ending it, she whispered. I did. But I didn't. Tears streamed down my face. I thought, you'd be mad. I knew. But I also thought, you'd help me. There. I said it. She wiped at her face with the corner of her apron. When she spoke again, her voice had a different tone. One I'd never heard from her before, too hard, too sharp. I raised you in the Word, Anna, she said. I dedicated you to God when you were born. I prayed over you more nights than I can count. And this is what you chose. I know, I repeated. I know I failed. But I'm still your daughter. That sentence hung between us, heavy. I am still your daughter. She took in a long breath, grabbed the Bible off the table, and held it to her chest. Her fingers dug into the leather until her knuckles went white. As long as you insist on walking this path, she said slowly, there is no place for you under this roof. At first I thought I'd misheard. What? My voice cracked. You want to live in sin, throw away everything I taught you, stay tied to a boy who wants nothing to do with God, she went on. Then you make your decisions, but you live with them. You won't do it under my roof like nothing happened. Mom, I tried to move closer. She stepped back. Pack your things. Those 3 words sliced through me. Please, Mom. My legs shook. My hands were slick. My vision blurred. Don't do this. I don't have anywhere to go. Pack your things, Anna, she repeated. While I can still look at you. I climbed the stairs to my room on numb legs. I threw clothes into a duffel bag, shoved that Bible into the side pocket, grabbed a few random things I thought I might need. The pregnancy test ended up stuffed in a corner. When I came back downstairs, my mom stood by the door, Bible under her arm again. She didn't cry anymore. She looked like a statue. Do you have somewhere to go? She asked, not quite looking at me. I don't know, I answered honestly. God will have to take care of that, she replied, eyes drifting up for half a second. But you can't stay here. She opened the front door. Late afternoon light flooded in. Street noise rushed inside. I looked back at her one last time, hoping for a gesture, a hug, anything. Nothing came. The sound of that door slamming behind me was the sound of something inside me shattering. 20 years later, different building, different door, different city. Same heart. The knocking had stopped now. The hallway outside my apartment was quiet again. Then I heard her voice one more time, muffled through the wood. Anna. I don't have anywhere to go tonight, she said. I just need a place to sleep. Tomorrow I'll be gone. I promise. That sentence sliced right through time. I remembered her question to me 2 decades ago, do you have somewhere to go? And my answer. I didn't. Tonight, she didn't. For half a second, I almost opened the door just for the bitter symmetry of it. Like life had turned itself inside out and was daring me to do the math. But pride is its own kind of home. A hard, lonely one. I backed away, made my way to the kitchen, and dropped the dish towel on the counter. My hands were shaking so much I knocked over a glass in the sink. In the living room, Laura stuck her head out of her bedroom. Mom? She asked softly. Everything okay? Who was at the door? How do you tell your daughter the woman outside is the same one who threw you out for being pregnant with her? It's nothing, I lied, and it tasted bitter. Go back to your room. I'll be there in a minute. She hesitated, then went back and closed the door quietly. Out in the hallway, my mother coughed. I could picture her perfectly, wet coat, gray hair plastered to her forehead, that Bible clutched like a lifeline. Anna, please, she called. Just for tonight. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't move. Eventually I heard slow footsteps fading down the corridor. The ding of the elevator, the slide of its doors, and then nothing. I stood in my kitchen, listening to that nothing, with my heart pounding and one question hammering inside my head, God, why now? I'm not the kind of person who prays pretty prayers. Not anymore. After that day, my conversations with God turned short, jagged, full of interruptions. But that night, standing by my sink that smelled like lemon dish soap and leftover pasta, I found myself praying without even deciding to. If this is you messing with my story, I thought, I'm not ready. But please, don't let me make it worse. There was no sudden voice. No bright light in the hallway. Just a car passing outside and the tick of the cheap wall clock. I could have gone to bed and pretended the knocking hadn't happened. But the past, when it decides to come back, doesn't knock only once. The next day at work, I answered calls and read scripts off my screen, but behind every caller's voice I kept hearing another one, Anna. I know you're there. I don't have anywhere to go. On my lunch break, while pushing cold cafeteria food around my plate, my coworker Jessica sat down across from me. You look wrecked, she said bluntly. What's going on? I thought about saying nothing. Instead, the truth slipped out. My mom showed up at my apartment last night, I said. First time I've seen her in 20 years. Jess paused mid-bite. The same mom who? She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. She knew my story in bullet points. Yeah. That one. And, she asked. I didn't open the door. The words hung between us like a confession. You think you did the wrong thing? She asked gently. I don't know, I said. I know I wasn't ready to look her in the face and act like nothing happened. But something's been chewing at me ever since. Like maybe I just let a chance slip by and I won't get it back. Jess stirred her drink with her straw, thinking. Sometimes God brings scenes back into our lives, she said, not to shame us, but to heal us. I'm not saying you should have opened the door. But if this won't stop bugging you, maybe there's still something there that isn't healed. I rolled my eyes. You always gotta turn everything into maybe God, she smirked. Somebody's gotta. If you leave it to yourself, you're gonna call everything coincidence, even when it knocks on your door in the middle of the night holding a Bible. I had no comeback. When I got home that evening, the first thing I did was look through the peephole. Empty hallway. My stomach sank and relaxed at the same time. I opened the door, stepped inside, and there, on the dining table, sat the old Bible from the bookshelf. Open. Did you mess with the Bible? I called out. Laura came to the doorway of her room, hair up, backpack still on one shoulder. I did, she said. I needed a verse for a class project. When I opened it, something fell out. She pointed toward the book. My heart sped up. I walked over. There, between two yellowed pages, was a folded sheet of notebook paper, edges worn, lines faint. I picked it up carefully. The handwriting was my mother's. Friday, August 12, 2005. Today my daughter left home. I'm the one who told her to go. My hands are shaking as I write, because I don't know if I did the right thing or if I destroyed the very thing I begged God to protect. I stopped. The room shrank. Laura watched me, silent. Is that, from Grandma? She asked, a hopeful thread in her voice. Looks like it, I managed, my eyes already stinging. The letter went on. I always prayed my daughter would walk in truth. I begged God to keep her from bad paths. When I found out she was pregnant, it felt like every prayer I ever prayed crashed down on my head at once. Shame fell on me like a storm. I prayed, I sobbed, I asked for direction. In the chaos in my mind, I convinced myself that being strict meant being holy. That putting her out of my house would prove I loved you more than my own child. Now the house is quiet and the silence weighs more than anything. Some sentences were blurred, as if tears had smudged the ink. I don't know if I did the right thing, Lord. I'm afraid I've confused your voice with my own pride. If I'm wrong, please show me a way back before it's too late. Near the end, the handwriting shook more. If you ever read this, Anna, it means God allowed it somehow. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to say these things to your face. But I want you to know, even when I said you weren't my daughter anymore, my heart never believed it. I just didn't know how to handle our pain. Signed simply, Mom. I had to sit down. It was like someone had pulled the floor out from under me again, but differently. Mom, Laura said, pulling out a chair next to me. Did she write that the day she kicked you out? Looks that way, I said, voice trembling. Had you ever read it before? She asked. Never. I didn't even know it was in there. Laura glanced at the Bible, the letter, then back at me. Maybe, it's not a coincidence that it fell out now, she said quietly. I stared at the blotted ink, feeling a strange mix of old anger, new sadness, and something I didn't want to call hope. For years I'd held on to a picture of my mother as just the villain, the woman who cared more about appearances than about me, who pushed me out when I needed her most. Reading those shaky lines was like seeing the same picture with a different filter. Mom, Laura pressed gently. What if God's giving you a chance to see the whole story this time? That sentence lingered in the air long after she walked back to her room. That night, for the first time in years, I opened the Bible not as a dusty prop but like something living. My eyes fell on a story about a father running to meet his son who came home dirty and empty-handed. I snapped the book shut quickly, like I'd been caught doing something I wasn't allowed to. It's not the same, I muttered. It's not that simple. But deep down, I knew there were uncomfortable similarities. The difference was that in my story, I'd been the one forced out. And now, the person knocking on my door wasn't a shameful son coming home, it was an aging mother who seemed just as lost as I had once been. The next morning, I woke up with a half-formed decision beating in my chest. I needed, at least, to know where she was. I knew the old street where we'd lived. I'd spent 20 years carefully never typing that address into any search bar. I opened my Maps app and slowly entered the street name. It auto-filled the rest. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then grabbed my phone and a jacket. 2 days passed before I could bring myself to show Laura what I was thinking. She noticed before I even spoke. Mom, something's different, she said one night as we washed dishes side by side. You're quieter. But not I had a rough day at work, quiet. a different quiet. I shrugged. It's adult stuff, I said automatically. Adult stuff or daughter stuff? She pushed, half smiling. I sighed. Daughter stuff. She turned off the tap, dried her hands, and leaned against the counter, really looking at me. You want to go see Grandma, don't you? I didn't ask, how do you know? Of course she knew. I don't know what I want, I answered honestly. Part of me wants to pretend none of this is happening. Another part, I glanced toward the letter on the table. Can't stop hearing that line, if I'm wrong, show me a way back before it's too late. Laura folded her arms. What if the way back isn't just for her, she asked softly. What if it's for you too? On a Sunday morning, instead of sleeping in, I woke up with my heart pounding like I had a big exam. Sunlight sliced through the curtains in a narrow strip. I stared at that bright line for a minute, trying to invent excuses not to go. None of them convinced me. I showered, put on neutral clothes, jeans, a plain top, a light jacket. I changed my shoes 3 times and finally stuffed my feet into old sneakers. When I stepped out of my room, Laura was already dressed. You're coming? I asked, surprised. If you'll let me, yeah, she said. But if you'd rather go alone, I get it too. I looked at her. Part of me wanted to protect her from any new hurt. Another part knew her story was tangled in this just as much as mine. She didn't do anything wrong, but she'd lived in the fallout her whole life. Come with me, I decided. But if I tell you to wait outside, you wait. She nodded. We took the bus across town. The city changed block by block, from glass office buildings and chain stores to older houses, cracked sidewalks, corner liquor stores, and laundromats. When we stepped off at the stop near my old street, a strange feeling washed over me. Some things were exactly the same, the little convenience store on the corner, the cracked pavement in front of the old pharmacy, the big tree that cast shade over half the block. Other things had changed. The pizza place was now a hair salon, the old newspaper stand was gone, some houses had gained extra rooms and new porches. Is it here? Laura asked quietly. Yeah, I said, swallowing. We walked slowly until we reached the house I'd grown up in. The front door was a different color now. The number on the wall was repainted in white. Plastic flowers hung in a planter near the steps, something my mom would have never put up. I rang the doorbell with a shaking hand. A middle-aged woman I'd never seen before opened the door. She had tired eyes but a kind face. Hi, she said. Can I help you? Sorry to bother you, I began. I used to live here, a long time ago. I'm looking for the woman who owned the house. Angela Carter. Do you know if she still lives around here? The woman squinted, searching her memory. Oh. Angela, she said at last. Yeah, she lived here. But she moved out quite a while back. Something inside me sank. Did she stay in the area? I asked, bracing myself. She did, the woman replied. I bought the house from her husband, Jim, about 9 years ago. Poor man got real sick after she moved out. Didn't last much longer. My breath caught. He passed. I asked. Yeah, she said gently. Heart trouble. Lived here alone when I first came to see the place. He seemed like he was carrying a heavy load. He talked about a daughter a lot, actually. Said she was the biggest ache in his life. My legs felt shaky. My dad. I had been so focused on my anger at my mother that I'd left my father's memory in a blurry corner. He'd never exactly defended me that day. Hearing that he'd spent his last years telling strangers how much he missed me hurt in a way I hadn't prepared for. And Angela? I forced myself to ask. Do you know where she went? The woman nodded. Yeah. She stayed with her sister a while, then ended up renting a little room behind a church, she said. Helps them with cleaning and stuff. I've got the address somewhere if you want it. She disappeared inside, leaving the door half open. Laura moved closer, gripping my hand. When the woman came back, she held a worn scrap of paper. Here, she said. This is the church. Not far from here, few stops up. And, if you don't mind me asking, who are you to her? I took a breath. I'm her daughter. Her expression softened. In that case, she said quietly, I'd say somebody's prayers are being answered. I didn't trust my voice enough to reply. I just thanked her, took the paper, and left. On the bus to the church, Laura asked, You never knew Grandpa died? I shook my head. When you cut off one person, I said, you end up cutting off a whole story. When I broke with your grandmother, I broke with everything attached to her. Including him. She squeezed my hand. Maybe there's still a way to say goodbye to him, she said softly. The church building was modest, with beige siding, a small cross over the door, and a blue sign that read, Grace Community Church. The gate was open. People were going in and out, carrying chairs, arranging tables, preparing for some midweek event. I stopped on the sidewalk. We could come back another day, I murmured. We could, Laura agreed. Do you really want to, though? I looked up at the sky. A few clouds drifted past, pushed by a wind I couldn't feel from where I stood. That line from the letter ran through my mind again, if I'm wrong, show me a way back before it's too late. Maybe this door was part of that. Let's go, I said. Inside, the church smelled like pine sol and old wood. The floor shone. Pews lined the sanctuary. In one corner, near the stage, a short woman with her gray hair in a bun was scrubbing the floor with intense focus. My heart skipped. It wasn't my mom. A man stacking hymnals in a bookshelf noticed us. Hey there, he said kindly. Can I help you? I'm looking for someone, I said. I heard she lives here, in the back. Angela Carter. His face lit with recognition. Oh, Miss Angela, he said. Of course I know her. Prayer warrior, that one. She's in a little room out back. Probably hanging laundry right about now. You can go down that hallway, second door on the left. She's got plants outside. My heartbeat was suddenly so strong it felt like I had swallowed it. As we walked down the narrow hallway, my legs felt heavier with each step. At the end was a small courtyard with a few potted plants, a clothesline with shirts and towels, and two doors. The first door was half open, a toddler's laughter coming from inside. The second was closed, dark wood, with a small, welcome mat in front of it. Want me to knock? Laura whispered. No, I said. This time I have to. I raised my hand. 3 knocks. The sound bounced around inside my chest. Silence. I was almost ready to turn around and run home, insist we had the wrong place, try again, some other day, that would never come. Then I heard slow footsteps inside, the click of a lock, and the door opened a crack. She was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just finally grown. Her hair was almost entirely white now, pulled back in that same simple bun. Lines fanned out from the corners of her eyes, traces of years of worry and laughter both. She wore a long skirt and a faded sweatshirt. A dish towel hung over her shoulder. Can I help you? She began politely. It's just a little room, but, she stopped. Her gaze locked on my face, and I watched recognition move through her eyes like a wave. Anna, she whispered. My throat closed. I couldn't say anything. Every part of me wanted to bolt forward, hug her, scream at her, ask her why, run away, all at once. My feet didn't move. Mom, I said at last, barely audible. The dish towel slipped from her fingers and fluttered to the floor. She lifted both hands to her mouth, as if trying to keep her heart from spilling out. Oh, God, she breathed. I asked so much, so much. She stumbled back a step like the sight of me had physically hit her. Guilt flashed across her face like lightning. I'm so sorry, she blurted, words tumbling out, raw and rushed. I am so sorry, my girl. She stopped and swallowed hard. Are you still my daughter? She asked, in a voice so fragile I barely recognized it as hers. That question cut deep. Before I could answer, Laura stepped forward. Hi, she said softly. I'm Laura. My mother's eyes shifted to her. In that second I saw two things battle in her expression, pure joy at seeing the granddaughter she'd never met, and pain at realizing how much of her life she'd missed. Laura, she repeated, tasting the name. The baby, she couldn't finish the sentence. Tears overflowed. Some muscle memory inside me resisted the urge to move toward her. Another part of me knew that if I didn't take at least one step, I'd regret it forever. You live here? I asked, just to say something. She wiped at her face with the back of her hand. Yes, she said quietly. It's small, but it's what God gave me for now. Come in, please. If you have a minute. If you don't, I understand. Her words were full of, I understand, and, if you want, as if every sentence carried a built-in exit route. We'll come in, Laura answered before I could overthink it. The room really was small. A twin bed, a tiny dresser, a two-burner hot plate, a tiny refrigerator, a table with two mismatched chairs. On the wall, faded photos. On the table, another Bible, this one smaller, also well-worn. The same book. A different story. Sit, she said, pulling out a chair for me. I sat. My hands had no idea where to go, so I folded them in my lap. You look thinner, she said. Tired. But beautiful. Grown. Life is tiring, I said wryly. For all of us, she agreed. A pocket of silence expanded in the room before she finally broke it. I saw you last night, she said. At your building. I know, I cut in gently. And I didn't open the door. She nodded, swallowing. I deserved that, she said. After what I did, it would have been fair if you never opened any door to me again. I almost didn't even go. I sat in that hallway practicing speeches in my head, and none of them sounded good enough. In the end, all I could say was your name. Her voice shook. I spent the night asking God to show me if I really got everything wrong back then, she continued. And this morning, one of the ladies at church told me she dreamed I got a visit. I thought it was just talk. Then, you showed up. She looked at me carefully. I don't know if that feels small to you, she said. To me, it feels like more than I deserve. I thought of the letter hidden in my Bible. I read what you wrote, I said. Confusion crossed her face. What I wrote? The letter, I said. From the day you kicked me out. It fell out of the Bible. You wrote you were afraid you'd confused God's voice with your pride. She clutched her chest like her heart had bumped against her ribs. I did write that, she admitted. But I never imagined you'd actually see it. I never had the courage to give it to you. Or to throw it away. So I hid it. I thought maybe nobody would ever read it. Well, I said quietly. I did. And for the first time, I saw you not just as the woman who kicked me out, but as a woman who was terrified. She let out a short, broken laugh. I was so afraid, she said. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of failing God. Afraid of losing you. And in my fear, I did exactly what I feared most, I lost you. Another silence settled, not the heavy kind from before, but a fragile one. She tried again. I've spent years praying for you. Even when I had no idea where you were. When I heard you had a baby, I started praying for her too. I didn't know her name. I just said, take care of my granddaughter, Lord. Even if she never knows I exist. I glanced at Laura. She was crying quietly. So, Laura said, voice wobbly. I might be walking around because of prayers I didn't even know I had. My mom let out a watery laugh. No doubt, she said. Even when we're a mess, God's still listening. Part of me wanted to fall into her arms right then. Another part wanted to unload 2 decades of pain on her, in detail. I don't know where to start, I admitted. I lived things I shouldn't have had to live. I heard things I shouldn't have heard. I did things I'm not proud of. There were nights I'd rock Laura, terrified and alone, and I was angry at you for not being there. Angry at Dad for staying silent. Angry at God for watching. She lowered her head. I know, she whispered. And I don't have a list of excuses to hand you. Only regret. But, I added slowly, I also know this. If I made every decision from here on out based only on the hurt from that day, I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't have come. I would have torn up the letter, thrown the Bible out, and pretended I didn't hear those knocks last night. I looked straight at her. The fact that I'm here is something, I said. I don't know what yet. But it's more than nothing. Tears welled up in her eyes again. Does that mean there's still some kind of path? She asked. I don't know what that path looks like, I said. I don't know if I'll ever be able to call this room my mom's house. I don't know if I can hug you today like 20 years didn't happen. But I know this, I'm willing to take one step and see what God does with it. She pressed her fist to her mouth to muffle a sob. One step is already more than I dared to ask for, she said. I've spent 20 years preparing for the possibility that you'd never speak to me again. I didn't prepare for grace. Laura stood up and came around the table. Without asking, she wrapped her arms around my mother. At first it was stiff and awkward, like 2 mismatched puzzle pieces trying to fit. Then, slowly, their bodies relaxed into the shape of the hug. Something invisible filled that cramped room, a presence softer than any background music. Not a spotlight. Not a dramatic movie moment. Just a gentle awareness that, despite all our failures, someone else had been stitching loose threads in the dark this whole time. I stayed seated, watching my mother and my daughter cling to each other, and felt an invitation I couldn't ignore. Nobody said my name. But the space left open in that embrace felt like it had been cut out just for me. I stood up. Both pairs of eyes turned toward me. Fear shouted inside, what if you get hurt again? What if she disappoints you? What if this is just temporary? A quieter thought rose up behind it, what if, this time, you're not alone? I took a step. Then another. Until I reached them. For the first time in 20 years, I rested my cheek on my mother's shoulder. She didn't smell like she used to. Back then it was all dish soap and spices. Now it was a mix of cleaning solution, laundry detergent, and tears. But beneath all that, there was still something I recognized. Mom. It wasn't a perfect hug. It was shaky, wet, interrupted by little gasps. But it was a beginning. Somewhere deep inside, a sentence floated up, not in words I heard, exactly, but as a clear understanding, just as you're welcoming her, you've been welcomed. I didn't have a neat sermon to attach to that moment. I just knew that, in a way I couldn't explain, God had not spent the last 20 years on the sidelines. He'd been there that day on the porch. He'd been there when I rocked Laura, trembling. He'd been there when my dad wrote that letter. He'd been there when my mother fell to her knees on a kitchen floor. And he was here, in this tiny room behind a church, holding all three of us together even while we trembled. We didn't solve everything that day. We didn't rewrite the past. But we did something I never thought we would: we opened the door instead of slamming it. We spent the next few hours talking about what we could, and leaving alone what we couldn't yet touch. We laughed at some old memories, cried over others, and discovered things about each other we'd never known. For example, that my mother had been volunteering at that church for years without telling a soul in the family, that she still had a photo of me at 8 years old taped to the inside of her closet door, that she'd stopped singing in the church choir because certain lyrics about grace and forgiveness were too hard to get through. When the sun had slid low and the light in the little room had gone soft, Laura checked the time. "Mom, we should go," she said reluctantly. "You have to be at work early, remember?" My mom's face fell a little. "I don't want to keep you too long," she said quickly. "I've already taken too much." "We decide what's too much now," I said gently. "Not the past." She smiled, embarrassed. "At least let me walk you to the door," she said. We stepped back into the hallway. As she opened her door fully, I noticed a sheet of paper taped to the inside. In shaky handwriting, it read, "God, don't let me die before fixing at least part of what I broke." My throat tightened. On the way out, my mom spoke up again. "Could I," she hesitated. "Could I maybe visit you sometime? Not to intrude. Just to see where you live. To see how you and Laura do life. Maybe let her show me how to use my phone without breaking it." The picture of her sitting on my battered couch, coffee mug in hand, watching Laura demonstrate some app made my brain glitch. "We can work toward that," I said. "I'm not promising a date yet. I need air. But I want it to happen." She nodded like I'd just given her a gift too big to unwrap all at once. "That's enough for me," she said. "One step at a time." Having her move in with us hadn't even crossed my mind that day. That came later. First, life had a few more twists. Not long after our visit, I got that phone call from the church about my mom collapsing while cleaning and ending up in the ER with chest pain. Hospital corridors always smell the same: disinfectant, fear, and bad coffee. When I stepped into her curtained-off corner in the emergency department, she was lying on a narrow bed with wires stuck to her chest, a monitor beeping softly, an oxygen sensor clipped to her finger. She looked smaller than she had in the little room at the church. "I didn't want you to see me like this," she said with a half-smile. "I always imagined that if you visited me in a hospital, I'd be that lady in the gown adding encouragement to everyone else's chart. Not this." "What happened?" I asked, pulling a plastic chair closer. "I was mopping the hallway," she said. "Started feeling this tightness in my chest, pain going up my neck. Next thing I knew, I was on the floor and people were praying and yelling and calling 911. At least if I had died, it would have been on church property. Halfway there, right?" I scowled. "Don't joke like that." She shrugged, then winced. Okay. Too soon." The doctor came in, a tired-looking cardiologist who explained she'd had unstable angina, that some test results were concerning, that they needed to keep her, maybe do a catheterization, check for blockages, maybe put in a stent. Serious, but not hopeless. After he left, my mom looked at me. "I don't want to be a burden," she said quickly. "You've carried enough because of me already. I don't want you feeling obligated to take care of me now out of guilt." The word "now" hung heavy. "Who said this is the end?" I shot back. "You're old, yeah, but not dead." She smiled. "Thanks for the compliment." "You know what I mean," I said. "We don't have to figure out everything today. You get through this first. We'll figure out the rest." She nodded. "Will you, Read something to me, she asked, gesturing toward her purse. My glasses are giving me trouble. My little Bible is in there. Something about not being afraid. Not so much of dying, more of living with things unresolved. I found the small Bible in her bag. It was a travel-sized twin of the one on my shelf, full of colored sticky notes. I flipped until my eyes landed on a verse that said something like, "Don't be afraid, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you." I read it out loud, my voice catching a bit. I always thought promises like that were for people who got it right, I admitted. These days, I'm not so sure. If God only stuck around for the strong and the steady, there wouldn't be anybody to hold. My mom smiled faintly. Sometimes I read that verse, she said, and think God isn't just saying, "Don't be afraid of what's coming." He's saying, "Don't be afraid to really look at what you've done either." She stared at the ceiling. "I spent years avoiding looking at that day with you head on," she confessed. I knew that if I really stared at it, I'd have to admit I'd used God's name to protect my own image. Now I'm more afraid of pretending I didn't than of admitting I did. Her honesty disarmed me. In the end, she needed angioplasty and a stent. She spent a few days in the hospital. The discharge instructions were clear: new meds, heart-healthy diet, shorter work hours, regular follow-ups, someone to help keep track of everything. "Does she live alone?" the nurse asked, glancing at me over a stack of pill bottles. "She was renting a room behind a church," I said. "She has people around, but no family." "You'll want to figure out something more stable for a while," the nurse said. "The first months are important." Back home that night, I sat at our kitchen table with all her prescriptions spread out like a puzzle. Laura watched me. "So," she said carefully, "you're thinking what I think you're thinking." "That depends," I replied. "What do you think I'm thinking?" "That we can't just send her back to that tiny room alone," she said. "That maybe, she should stay here for a while." I stared at my daughter. "You realize what that would mean?" I asked. "Our tiny apartment, 3 people, 1 bathroom, your grandmother's snoring, her opinions on everything, her habits, our bills, our space." "I know," Laura said. "I also know we've done hard before. We don't really know how to do easy." She paused. "And if the question is, do I want Grandma to live with us for a while, my answer is yes." I blinked. "You're not afraid of getting too close and then being hurt?" I pressed. "Of her saying something that cuts deep, of old patterns popping up?" "I am," she said honestly. "But I'm more afraid of becoming someone who never risks love because she's always bracing for pain. I've seen what that does to people." She meant me. I let out a breath. "You're talking about me," I said. "I'm talking about us," she corrected. "You. Me. Grandma. All of us who've let fear make decisions for us. Maybe this time, we can let love at least have a voice." The next day at the hospital, I sat by my mother's bed. "I've been thinking," I began. "About what the doctor said. And about you going back to that little room alone." She lowered her gaze. "I told God last night," she said softly, "that if he was going to take me, he could. But if he left me here, I didn't want it to be just to sit alone in a corner waiting." "Well," I said, "he left you." She smiled. "For now." "So," I continued, "if you want, you can come stay with us for a while. At our apartment. It's small, and messy, and not quiet. There's no guest room, so we'll have to shuffle furniture. You'll have to share in our chaos instead of being queen of your own. But, you won't be alone. Not while you figure out this new routine." She stared at me like I'd just told her she won the lottery. "Live, with you?" she repeated. "In our apartment," I confirmed. "Not a hotel. Real life." You hearing me yell at telemarketers. Me hearing you pray in the kitchen. You accidentally oversalting the soup. The whole deal. Tears spilled from her eyes. I don't know if I deserve that, she whispered. Deserve? I scoffed. If we're going to talk about what we all deserve, we're in trouble. I didn't deserve what happened to me either. Neither did Laura. But here we are. She blinked hard. Are you sure? She asked. Really sure? No, I said frankly. I'm not sure about anything. I'm terrified. But I know this, if I say no right now, I'm going to carry that no around my neck like a stone for the rest of my life. She closed her eyes and let out a long, shaky breath. Then, yes, she said quietly. If there's still time, I want that. I nodded. Good, I said. Because Laura already started planning where your stuff's going to go. Having my mother move into my apartment was like adding a new instrument to a song we'd been playing as a duet for years. Everything had to adjust. There were new sounds, new rhythms, the occasional screech. When we brought her home, Laura had cleaned like a woman on a mission. The couch had a clean throw blanket, there were fresh pillowcases on the fold-out bed, and every surface that could shine was shining. Welcome, Grandma, she said with a dramatic bow, opening the door. My mom laughed nervously. I never thought I'd hear that, she admitted. She shuffled in slowly, taking it all in, the couch with its slightly sagging cushions, the cramped kitchen with its mismatched cabinets, the tiny hallway leading to our bedrooms. It's simple, I said, suddenly self-conscious. But it's ours. It's more than I've had in a long time, she said. And even if it were less, the important part is that you opened it. We unloaded her bag, lined up her new medications on the counter, and gave her the fold-out in the living room. That first night, I watched her lying on the couch bed, Bible open on her chest, her lips moving as she read. Laura worked on a paper at the kitchen table. The TV hummed quietly with some old show as background noise. For the first time in a long time, our apartment felt fuller. Not just crowded. Full. Sometime after 10, I sat on the edge of the couch bed. How are you feeling? I asked. Like I landed on another planet, she said honestly. But a good one. A planet with a squeaky bathroom door and the best coffee I've had in years. You burned it every time when I was a kid, I teased. And you never let me forget it, she shot back, smiling. She closed the Bible and set it aside, marking her place with a receipt. Anna, she said. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do. Might be years, might be less. But however long it is, if you'll let me. I don't want to spend it being just the woman who messed up once 20 years ago. I'd like the chance to be known for who I really am. And to really know you, not just the teenage version frozen in my memory. I listened. I don't know how much patience I have, I answered. Or how many triggers. Or how many landmines are buried in my heart. But, that sounds fair. She nodded. So where do we start? She asked. I looked around at the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, the boots by the door, the pill bottles on the counter, the opened mail on the table. We start with breakfast tomorrow, I said. With coffee that doesn't burn, toast, maybe some eggs. And a conversation that isn't about what we did wrong, but what we can still do right. She smiled. That sounds like a miracle already. If the first test of our reconciliation was having my mother move in, the second came wrapped in glossy paper and bright blue letters. I opened the cabinet one morning to put away dishes and found a folded brochure leaning against the sugar jar. On the front, in big letters, it said, Launch. Below that, a picture of college kids with backpacks, grinning in front of a tiny airplane graphic. Little arrows pointed at words like immersion, service, global experience, and Faith in Action. On the back, scribbled in pen, were words in Laura's handwriting. I don't know how to tell you yet. L. Laura. I called, holding the brochure. She came out of her room, hair in a messy bun, laptop under her arm. Yeah, Mom. I held it up. This fall out of Grandma's Bible, or did you drop it on purpose? She froze mid-step. Oh, she said. Just that. Oh, what? I asked calmly, even though I felt a shift in my stomach. She came to the table and sat down. I was going to tell you, she said quickly. I swear. I just hadn't figured out how yet. How about by starting with what this is? I asked, tapping the brochure. It's a program through my college, she said. 6 months overseas. Study, service with a local church, community projects. I applied months ago, thinking I'd never get in. And I got in. She gave me a small, bracing smile. Where? I asked. Portugal, she said. Or maybe Ireland. They're still placing groups. It's kind of a big deal. Kind of, I agreed slowly. When were you going to tell me? I added. When I figured out how to say it without sounding like I was abandoning you, she admitted. That hurt more than I wanted to show. Are you afraid of turning into me? I asked quietly. She met my eyes. I'm afraid of living big moments without you, she said honestly. But I'm also afraid of not living them at all because I'm so busy trying to protect you. Before I could answer, my mother came out of the bathroom holding an empty glass. Do we have more orange juice? She asked, then stopped when she saw our faces and the brochure. Her gaze dropped straight to the word launch. What's this? She asked slowly. Laura swallowed. Grandma, it's a study and service program, she said. Through the college. I was going to talk to you both. I just hadn't yet. Overseas, my mother said. By yourself? With a group, Laura said quickly. Coordinators, local church, host families. Not alone. My mom shook her head as if trying to clear it. You're too young for that, she declared. And the world is too dangerous. There's too much out there waiting to swallow girls like you whole. She turned to me. Say something, Anna. I felt two forces pulling at me again. One, the impulse to grab my daughter and keep her close, lock the door, wrap her in bubble wrap. Two, the vivid memory of a slammed door, a bag in my hand, and a voice telling me there was no room for me under that roof as I was. I looked at my mom. I'm talking, I said. But I'll choose my words. This is temptation, my mom insisted. To drag her out there, away from what's safe. These programs always look pretty on paper. But out there, it's chaos. People who don't respect God, who don't care about her soul or her body. Is that really what you want? Grandma, that's not fair, Laura protested. This isn't me running away with some boyfriend who doesn't care. It's school. Ministry. A chance to grow. Grow? My mother repeated. God wouldn't tell you to leave your mother when she just got her heart put back together. He wouldn't open that door only to drag you across an ocean. That's not how he works. Don't confuse excitement with God's voice, Laura. There it was again, that tone I knew too well. Scripture laced together with fear and control. I saw it then, history lining up neatly, ready to repeat itself. My mother in the role of guardian of righteousness. My daughter cast as the supposedly naive girl about to make a huge mistake. And me, stuck in the middle. Except this time, I wasn't a teenage girl with a duffel bag. This time, I was the woman who got shoved out. And I'd just invited the shover to live on my couch. Stop, I said, more sharply than I intended. They both looked at me. Mom, I said, meeting my mother's gaze, I get that you're scared. Really, I do. But you are not going to do to my daughter what you did to me. She recoiled slightly. I'm just trying to protect, I know, I cut in. But protection isn't the same as control. And it definitely isn't throwing God's name on top of your fear to make it sound holy. My heart pounded. Laura is not pregnant. She's not hiding some affair. She's not rejecting God. She's dreaming about something that might even grow her faith. That doesn't mean it'll be easy or that I'm thrilled about watching her walk into an airport with a suitcase. But it does mean I'm not going to slam doors out of panic. My mother twisted her fingers together. So you're just letting her go? She asked, incredulous. I'm going to talk, I said. Ask hard questions. Count the cost. Pray. Be honest about my fears. And if I have peace, yes, I'm going to let her go. If I don't, I'll say that too. But I will not weaponize the Bible against her. Laura glanced between us, eyes shining. I don't want to go against you, she told us both. I want to go with your blessing, if I go. I just don't want fear to have the final word again. Silence stretched. My mom breathed out slowly. I don't know how to do this, she said finally. I grew up thinking good mothers keep their kids close, physically, forever. We didn't get taught how to let go well. When life is hard, your instinct is to hold tighter, not loosen your grip. And in that tight, we squeeze more than we realize. She looked at Laura. I'm afraid, she admitted. I'm afraid something will happen to you out there. I'm afraid of watching you go and wondering every night if I made a mistake. I'm afraid of people judging me again. Telling me I'm a bad mother for allowing it. For failing to control my house. The old church language tasted sour. But I'm also afraid, she continued, voice softer, of standing in your way and realizing, years later, that I held you back from something God actually wanted to do. Of repeating the same story with a different cover. She spread her hands on the table. So. I'll pray, she said. Not, God, close this door because I'm scared. I'll pray, God, show us clearly whether this door is from you. If it's not, slam it shut where nobody can open it. If it is, give me the courage to step aside. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. That's all I'm asking, I said. Laura wiped her eyes. I don't have all the answers, she said. I don't know how I'll pay for everything. I don't know if I'll be homesick or if I'll love it. I don't know if I'll get on the plane and immediately want to come home. But I also know I don't want to keep living small just because fear is loud. She folded the brochure and set it gently on the open Bible in front of my mother. If I go, I'm going as your granddaughter and your daughter, she said. Not as someone you lost. And if I end up staying, I want that to be because we discerned it together, not because anybody yelled me into obedience. I felt something unfurl in my chest. The girl who had once been the reason for my exile now spoke maturity I wished I'd had at her age. Later, when my mom went to her room, Laura turned to me. So? She asked. What about you? What about me? How do you feel? She pressed. Really? Not what you think you should feel. What you actually feel. I stared at the brochure. I feel terrified, I said. Proud. Angry at the world for being dangerous. Tempted to join Grandma in sabotaging the whole thing just to keep you here. Tempted to shove you onto the next flight already so we can get this part over with. She laughed a little. And I feel, I added, tired of letting trauma write every chapter for us. I don't want our story to be 3 generations of women who never learned to stay or go without breaking each other. So, if the doors keep opening, if the money comes, if you still feel peace amid the nerves. I'll say, yes. She wiped fresh tears. With a condition, I added. Here it comes, she said, bracing. That you remember two things in every airport, every strange bed, every night you cry, I said. 1. You are never completely alone, no matter how alone you feel. 2. You always have a home to come back to. She nodded hard. And that you call your grandmother at least once a week, my mom's voice chimed from the hallway. Because if you disappear, I will find a way to track you down even if I have to hitchhike across the Atlantic. We laughed. We all knew she meant it. The next couple of months were a blur of paperwork, budget spreadsheets, emails, and prayers. Every practical step came with its own emotional weight. Buying a suitcase meant admitting she'd leave. Applying for a passport meant trusting there'd be a return. Explaining to well-meaning neighbors meant enduring the comments, "You're really letting her go alone? Aren't you scared?" I wouldn't let my kid do that. Every time, I had to choose whether to let their fear pile on top of my own. To my surprise, my mother became one of Laura's biggest defenders. "She's not running away," she'd say when someone got too dramatic. "She's being sent." Jesus didn't keep the disciples glued to his side forever. He sent them out. "She'll be okay. We're not throwing her to wolves." What she didn't say out loud, but sometimes whispered in her prayers, was, "Lord, please make her okay. And help me not to undo whatever you're doing." One afternoon, a week before departure, my mom came back from the grocery store looking rattled. She set the bag on the counter and leaned on the sink. "You all right?" I asked. She exhaled. "I ran into that old neighbor from our street," she said. "You know, the one who always knew everyone's business." I nodded. I remembered. "She asked about you," my mom went on. "Said she'd heard the prodigal daughter came back and that now I was eating my words. Then she asked about Laura. Said she heard my granddaughter was about to run off into the world and wondered if I was really going to let it happen." My jaw clenched. "What did you say?" I asked. "I started well," she said. "Told her we'd been praying, that it wasn't a rebellion thing. But then she said, if you were really a good mother, you wouldn't allow this." And for a second, I felt that familiar punch in my gut. Like I was right back there being judged by the whole pew row. I walked home half ready to tell you, "It's over. She's not going." She lowered her head. "I almost made the same mistake," she whispered. "Again. Because some woman in a grocery store used the right words to poke my oldest wound." "But you didn't," I pointed out. She looked up, surprised. "You came home," I said. "And you told me the truth. That's already different." She thought for a moment. "A few years ago," she admitted, "I would have marched in here and said God had shown me something. That I'd had a conviction this program wasn't from him. Really, it would have been that woman's voice bouncing around my own fear. I'm tired of baptizing my panic and calling it discernment." "So what do you think it was?" I asked. She sighed. "I think it was fear in church clothes," she said. "And I don't want to wear that outfit anymore. It never fit as well as I pretended it did." I nodded. "Back then," she continued, "I cared more about being seen as a good Christian mother than about being a loving mother. That's the ugly truth. I cared more about people's approval than about your heart. I can't undo that. But I can refuse to play that role again for Laura." She straightened up. "So no," she said firmly. "I'm not going to stand in her way. I'll pray my knees raw. I'll worry. I'll probably stare at my phone at 3 a.m. More nights than I want to admit. But I won't lock the door this time." The night before Laura's flight, our apartment looked like a travel store exploded in it. Open suitcase on the floor, clothes everywhere, Ziploc bags with travel-size bottles, chargers, adapters, printed itineraries, emergency contact lists, little sticky notes with reminders. My mom spent the whole week cooking Laura's favorite meals, mac and cheese the way she liked it, roast chicken, brownies from a box that somehow tasted like childhood. "I'm stocking up her memory," she said, stirring sauce. "So when she eats something weird over there, she'll have something good to compare it to." That last evening, after one final round of packing, I set the old Bible on the table. Its plastic cover was more yellowed now. Its spine creaked when I opened it. "All right," I said. "There's one more thing I want to do before you go." Laura sat. My mom turned her chair around to face us. "This Bible has seen the worst and best of our story," I said. "It was in your grandmother's hands when she put me out. It was in my bag when I left. It hid a letter I wasn't supposed to see and held another one from Grandpa I never got in time. It's where we stuck that program brochure, where we scribbled our clumsy prayers. It feels right that we mark this moment here too." I flipped to the first page. There was my mother's name. The original line to "My daughter Anna, so that the word never leaves your path." Underneath, my mom's new line to Laura, and to Laura, granddaughter God gave back to us as a promise of a new beginning. "Go far, but never forget who calls you home." I took a pen. My hand shook a little as I wrote, between those lines, "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It decides what to do with it." Under that, I added, "Tonight, we choose not to repeat the same closed door." I set the pen down. "I don't know if anyone besides us ever reads this page," I said. "If they do, I want them to know this house has seen hurt and failure, but also choices to do things differently." My mom traced the words with her fingertip, tears gathering in her eyes. "Amen," she whispered. Laura took a deep breath. "I'm going to carry this picture with me," she said. The three of us around a kitchen table, Bible open, pen in hand. "If I ever forget who I am over there, I'll remember this." She closed the Bible gently. "And I promise," she added, "that when I feel like running away from everything, I'll remember someone once chose not to kick me out when they were scared." The airport on departure day was a blur of neon signs, coffee smells, rolling suitcases, and foreign languages. Laura walked ahead with her new suitcase and worn backpack. My mom and I flanked her, dodging travelers and staring up at the big departure screens like they were oracles. At the check-in counter, the agent smiled politely, weighed the suitcase, tagged it, and sent it down the conveyor belt. "First time abroad?" he asked Laura. "First time this far," she said. "It'll go by fast," he replied. "You'll be back before they know it, with a million stories." He had no idea what kind of stories our family was already carrying. We moved toward the security checkpoint, that invisible line between "still home" and "already gone." We found a quieter corner away from the line to say our real goodbyes. My mom held Laura's hands tightly. "I'm not going to pretend I'm not scared," she said. "I am. But I'm also proud. And grateful. And amazed that God took a story as messed up as ours and brought us here." She swallowed. "If you feel alone over there," she went on, "don't bottle it up to protect us. Don't be strong on our behalf. Be honest. Cry. Call. And remember that the same God who watched you in that crib we bought at a thrift store is watching you get on that plane. He didn't lose sight of you in the clouds." Laura nodded, tears spilling over. "I know, Grandma," she said. "And I promise, if I end up ugly crying in some foreign street, I'll call you so you can ugly cry with me." My mom laughed through her tears. Then it was my turn. I wanted to say everything: be careful, stick with your group, don't drink anything someone else hands you, watch your phone, guard your heart, study hard, don't be afraid to have fun, don't forget why you're there. Instead, all that came out was, "I love you. You have a home." She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I know, she whispered. Thank you, for not locking me in. I let out a wet laugh. Go, I said. Before I drag you back and we ruin all our growth. She handed over her passport at security, gave us one last wave, then disappeared into the stream of people behind the metal detectors and glass walls. Watching her go hurt. But the hurt was different this time. 20 years ago, the sound of a slamming door had announced rejection. This time, the sound of a closing airport gate whispered something else, sending. Those 6 months were some of the longest and strangest of my life. Our days settled into new patterns. Work, cooking, pills sorted into sunrise and sunset slots. My mom and I shared chores, shared the remote, shared stories I'd never heard. Laura sent photos, narrow streets and tiled buildings, kids from the community center where she volunteered, older women from the local church who'd adopted her, cheap meals eaten on steps under centuries-old stone arches. Sometimes she looked euphoric. Sometimes she looked tired in a way you learn only on the far side of the world. We had our first real scare 2 months in. It started with a video call late one Saturday. The image when I answered was shaky, too close to her face, eyes red and puffy. What happened? I blurted. Nothing huge, she said, taking a breath. Just a lot of small things all at once. She told us about getting separated from her group in a busy part of the city. Her phone map had glitched. For 30 minutes she hadn't seen a single familiar face. A stranger had tried to strike up a conversation she didn't want. Nothing truly terrible had happened, but for those 30 minutes, fear had spread through her like ice water. I suddenly realized how far I was from home, she said. I sat down on this bench and thought, why did I think I could do this? And then another thought piled on, if I tell them, they'll freak out. I'll prove everyone right who said this was crazy. So I almost didn't call. My mom's face creased with concern. What made you call? She asked. Laura held up the little travel Bible. I opened this on that bench, she said. Just wherever my fingers landed. It was something about God being a refuge and an ever-present help. I realized I was trying to be my own refuge. And I heard Grandma's voice in my head saying, don't hide your fears from us. So, here I am. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then my mom, who once used verses to build walls, used them differently. Laura, she said, I spent half my life pretending I had no fear. The other half trying to clean up the mess that made. If I can ask you for anything, it's this, don't carry what you don't have to alone. Let God hear it. Let us hear it too. We can't fix everything, but we can cry with you from way over here. Laura smiled, tears slipping down her face. Thanks, she said. I just needed to see your faces. After the call, my mom and I sat at the table, the old Bible open between us, the letters tucked inside like small, stubborn seeds. Never in my wildest imagination, my mom said quietly, did I think I'd live to see a day where you, me, and your daughter would be learning to lean on God from the same side of the story. We still fight, I reminded her. She laughed. Oh, I know. But now, before I argue about something, I ask myself, am I scared or am I loving? It doesn't solve everything, but it stops me from picking up stones I used to throw so easily. I eyed her. And when the fear wins? I asked. She shrugged. Then I repent faster, she said. That's new, at least. I used to let my fear dig roots. Now I try to yank it out before it becomes a tree. When the 6 months were almost up, excitement and anxiety braided together inside our apartment. My mom folded and refolded the blanket on the couch bed. I scrubbed the bathroom corners like the president was coming over. We stocked the fridge with Laura's favorite cheap yogurt and granola bars. The night before her flight home, I sat at the table alone, the old Bible open to that crowded first page. I read the names again. The notes. The messy, heartfelt lines we'd added over time. Then I whispered the kind of prayer that used to get stuck in my throat: God, thank you. For doors that didn't stay shut. For the ones that opened. For the ones you're still working on. When she steps off that plane tomorrow, let me hug her like someone who knows what it is to be welcomed home by you. At the arrivals hall, the scene looked almost identical to the day we'd said goodbye. Same fluorescent lights. Same announcements. Same people craning their necks, searching for loved ones. Only we weren't the same women. We knew each other's wounds better. We knew God's patience better. When Laura finally appeared at the top of the ramp, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair pulled back, face a little older, she saw us before we saw her. She didn't walk. She ran. I moved first. My mother was right behind me. We collided in an awkward, beautiful tangle of arms and bags and tears. No one said, "I told you so." No one demanded a report card of her behavior. We just held on. Over her shoulder, my mother whispered something I almost didn't catch. "Thank you," she said. Not to me. Not to Laura. But up. And in that noisy, crowded airport, I felt something settle inside me. This story was never just about me and my mother, or me and my daughter. It was, above all, about a God who kept knocking on doors we'd bolted shut, until, one long, hard day at a time, we finally turned the locks. If you've listened to this far, I want to ask you just one thing. Whose knock have you been ignoring? Maybe it's a parent's name you avoid in your contacts. Maybe it's a child you stopped praying for because it hurts too much. Maybe it's your own heart, which you told to be quiet a long time ago. Or maybe, it's God's. The one who never left when the door closed, who never stopped seeing you as his child even when you stopped seeing yourself that way. If a mother who threw her daughter out can be welcomed into that daughter's home. If a girl who grew up in the shadow of someone else's fear can step onto a plane without repeating the same cycle. If 3 generations with so many reasons to stay apart can find their way into the same hug, what makes you think your story can't be rewritten too? God hasn't given up on the idea of meeting you at the door. He knows every slammed door in your past. He heard every sentence that broke you. He saw every night you thought you were alone. And still, gently, he keeps knocking. If this story touched something in you, don't let it stop at emotion. Let it become a step. Maybe your step is sending a message. Maybe it's picking up a Bible que você larga numa estante years ago. Maybe it's whispering, for the first time in a long time, God, if I've confused your voice with my fear, show me a way back, before it's too late. The truth is, it isn't too late. Not for you. Not while you can still hear the knock.